What's up everybody, it's Bluebear here, and today's video I will be going over the third deck that was ordered but not paid for that I revamped so it would fit into my $40 budget Commander precons that I sell on Facebook. So let me start by telling you how this deck came about. I was contacted out of nowhere and asked if I could build a deck using Siona, Captain of Pyleas. They didn't really care what it did, they just wanted Siona used because it reminded them of Wonder Woman from the DC Universe. No direction or even an inkling of an idea, just use Siona with a budget of $40 to $50. Since they didn't care what I did, just as long as it had some synergy, I took the opportunity to test out a build I've wanted to attempt for a while now, and Siona just happened to synergize well with the strategy. So what exactly does Siona do? Let me tell you. She is a 1 green, 1 white, and 1 generic mana 2/2 with 2 abilities that go great with auras. Her first ability is that when she enters play, look at the top 7 cards of your library, then you may reveal an aura from among those 7 and put it into your hand, then put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Her second ability says that whenever an aura you control becomes attached to a creature you control, you create a 1/1 white human creature token. So, the theme I went with was obviously enchantment based. Usually, that tends to lead to a Voltron-esque type of build, and while I did include some stuff in the deck that could make people think that, this is not a Voltron type of build entirely. This is an enchantment based build that can go in either Voltron or a tokens go wide theme. I really like how the deck turned out, so let me stop rambling so I can show you what I came up with. Like I always do, I'll start with the lands and go from there. Alright, so while artifact lands do exist, enchantment lands only exist in mystery packs as test cards. So the lands we're going to have are just a budget bunch of lands. So they're going to be mostly dual lands that come into play tapped or some other thing, except for like Canopy Vista, which enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands, and it has the land types. Fortified Village can come into play untapped if you reveal a forest or a plains. Blossoming Sands, again, comes into play tapped, and then at least it gives you a life for your trouble. Botanical Plaza, it comes into play tapped, but you could at least sacrifice it later to draw a card. Grey Pelt Refuge, again, gives you a life. Selesnya Guildgate, Tranquil Expanse, there were a bunch of them for green-white. Thriving Grove comes into play tapped. It taps that a green, but when it comes into play, you can choose another color, which in this case, you're going to choose white. And then on the same thing with Heathland, you're going to choose green. Myriad Landscape, so you can get some lands out of your deck and make your draws better, and at least they come into play. Evolving Wilds, same thing. Then your deck of land draws, and Terramorphic Expanse. And then, again, enchantment lands don't exist, so the rest of it's just going to be basic plains and forests. And as I always say in this section, I don't remember exactly how many, so the link to the deck list will be in the description of the video, so you can check it out. As far as the ramp section goes, this one's going to be a unique, just like last week's deck. I used creatures to do the ramp. This week, I'm going to use auras that enchant lands, because we are an enchantment-based deck. So, things like Wild Growth that let you tap to add an additional green when you tap a land for mana, and the rest of them will do something similar to that. Fertile Ground, Sheltered Eyrie, Find the Path. This one doesn't add additional. It just says when you tap the land, you can tap it for either what it normally does or 2 green. Sheltered Growth lets you add 2 mana of any color. 1 color. Bladed Burgeoning. And the last one will be Overgrowth. I wanted to fit the theme of enchantments, so this is how I went about doing it. Moving on to the creature section. This is where I wanted to get a little creative. So everything in this section will either be an enchantment, as well as a creature, become a aura of some sort, or deal with enchantments or auras in some type of way. So we start off with Shrine Steward, because it lets you go search your library for an aura. It also lets you search for a shrine, but in this deck you only care about the aura part. Leaf Crown Dryad, it is a 2-cast 2/2 that is also an enchantment that you can bestow. And what bestow means is that there's a cost associated with it, and then it gives it whatever it says here. So it gives the creature +2/+2 in reach if you bestow it for 4 onto a creature. One of the rules with bestow is that when the creature that it's bestowing dies, this falls off and becomes the creature part. So it's a little bit of resiliency for what you're doing. Nylea's Emissary, so it's a 4-cast 3/3 that you can bestow for 6. Has trample and gives +3/+3 in trample. Nylea's Forerunner doesn't bestow. It's an enchantment creature itself, so it counts as when you're casting an enchantment. This also triggers things like that, and that'll be important later. It's a 5-cast 5/3 with trample that gives all of your other creatures trample. Archetype of Endurance, another enchantment creature, does not bestow, but it gives all creatures you control hexproof and makes it so your opponents lose, all your opponent's creatures lose hexproof and can't gain hexproof. Generous Visitor, 1-cast 1/1 that whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. That's key, because that's going to be part of a Voltron style win-win. Yevamaya Enchantress gets +1/+1 for each enchantment in play. She can get really big in this deck. Our Gnarlid is a 3-cast 2/2 that creatures with power less than it can't block it, and then it gets +1/+1 for each aura on the battlefield. It doesn't have to be attached to him, which makes it really nice because you can have a little bit of resiliency with different creatures. You can have other creatures get bigger, and this one gets bigger alongside of it. Rabid Wombat, I've been wanting to put this in a deck for a long time. I love this card. This was originally in Legends, and now this is the Chronicles version. It's a 4-cast 0/1, which is really bad stats. But it gets +2/+2 for each aura, that's what creature enchantment is, on it. And it also has vigilance. That's what that means. All the wording on here is really old, so always look at Oracle text when a older card is presented to you because you want to make sure that the rules are what they are. Blossom Prancer. It's another tutor, if you will. It's a 5 to cast 4/4, and when it enters, you can look at the top 5 cards of your library, reveal a creature or enchantment card from among them, and put it into your hand, and then the rest on the bottom of your library. So not a full tutor. It's a scry-style tutor. This is Hopeful Eidolon. It's a 1 to cast 1/1. It bestows for 4, and it has +1/+1 and lifelink. It has lifelink, and it gives a creature it bestows +1/+1 and lifelink. I'll have superimposed the English version on here for you. Nyxborn Shieldmate, 1 to cast 1/2 with bestow of 3, and it gives the creature +1/+2. Transcendent Envoy. It's a 2 to cast 1/2 flyer that gives all aura spells you control 1 mana less to cast. Always good to have cost reduction. Light Pause. It's a 2 to cast 2/2. When an aura enters the battlefield under control, if you had cast it, you may search your library for an aura card with a mana value less than or equal to that aura with a different name than each aura you control, which is no problem because we're in Commander and you don't have anything that's got the same name. And you can put that card onto the battlefield attached to Light Pause and then shuffle. So that caveat of looking for a different named one doesn't matter in Commander because everything has a different name. SRAM Senior Edificer. It's a 2 to cast 2/2 that lets you draw a card whenever you cast an aura, equipment, or vehicle. And this is going to be for auras. Alright. Core Spirit Dancer, 2 to cast 0/2 that gets +2/+2 for each aura attached to it. And then whenever you cast an aura spell, draw a card. See where I went there? So card draw is kind of a... unless you're willing to spend some money in green and white, not so easy to come by, so I've tried to find ways to do it, and that was 2 of the ways. There's more in here after that. Ghostblade Eidolon, 3 to cast 1/1, has bestow for 6. It has double strike itself, or it can bestow something and to give it +1/+1 and double strike. See where I'm going with this? You can actually do a Voltron style build, but because Siona also has the last ability says whenever you attach an aura or target something, I think it's cast an aura on a creature, you create a 1/1, so you can go wide and make all your stuff get buffed with different things, or you can just have a Voltron with backup for blocking later. Observant Alcide, it's a 3 to cast 2/2, bestow of 5, has vigilance and gives the creature it bestows +2/+2 in vigilance. Mason Enchantress, whenever you cast an enchantment spell, draw a card, so now it doesn't have to be an aura. This counts for the enchantment creatures you cast. It counts for all the auras you cast. Just keep that in mind. Anything that's a regular enchantment, it lets you draw a card. Lots of card drawing here. Blessed Spirits, 3 to cast 2/2 flyer. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, put a +1/+1 counter on it so it can get bigger. That counts for the creatures that are enchantments as well. Just keep all that in mind. A lot of synergy in this deck. Starnheim Courser, 3 to cast 2/2 flyer. That makes all artifacts and enchantments you cast cost 1 less. Like I said, cost reduction. Heliod's Pilgrim, 3 to cast 1/2. That lets you search your library for an aura card and put it in your hand. Lots of tutors. Totem Guide Heartbeast is a 5 to cast 2/5 that also tutors for a... What is it? Is it an aura? When it enters battlefield, search for an aura. So another aura tutor. Jukai Naturalist, 2 to cast 2/2 that has lifelink and makes all of your enchantment spells. That includes the enchantment creatures cost 1 less to cast. Satyr Enchanter, 3 to cast 2/2 that whenever you cast an enchantment, draw a card. See where all the synergy is here? Lots of card draw, lots of ways to get stuff in your hand, lots of auras. And when I get to the auras, you're going to see some cool stuff there too. Sumala Woodshaper, 4 to cast 2/1. When it enters battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library, and you can reveal a creature enchantment card from among them, put it in your hand. And that's all I've got for you as far as the creatures. See all the synergy there? So it's enchantment creatures, it's stuff that searches for enchantments or auras, it's stuff that lets you draw cards for enchantments, or for all enchantments, or for just ours. So lots of synergy. This deck is going to be fun. As far as the rest of the deck goes, it will be utility stuff. So I'll start off with the auras that are buffs. One thing I want to mention before I get into what I did, I want to show you something I did that's pretty cool with this section. Equipment are more resilient. When a creature dies with an equipment attached, it just falls off. But with auras, they go to the grave. So I tried to solve that issue with what I put in together here. So I start off with Sentinel's Eyes. It gives the creature +1/+1 in vigilance, and you can escape it, meaning that you can get it back from your grave. So that's a little resilient. And everything will be kind of like that. Raffin's Guidance, it's 1 to cast, gives the creature +1/+1, and then you can cast it from your graveyard. Chris Boone, 1 to cast, enchanted creature gets +1/+0 in flying, and then for 4, you can turn it from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to a creature. That's actually pretty good with Siona's ability. Brilliant Halo, 2 to cast, gives the creature +1/+2, and then when it is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, you can return it back to your hand, and then you can recast it later. So, again, I tried to solve that issue of them not being as resilient. Conviction, 2 to cast, gives the creature +1/+3, but this one doesn't come back from the grave. When the creature is targeted to die, or somebody wraths the board, you can actually pay a white to return it back to your hand. The good thing about that is, even though it doesn't return from your graveyard, so if it hits the grave, it's gone. This has some good shenanigans with Siona for attaching it to a creature. So you can cast it, return it back to your hand, and cast it again. You can do that over and over for however much mana you have, so you can get some cool triggers with the gaining the tokens. Felidar Umbra, it's kind of similar. It doesn't actually come back from the grave or come back to your hand. This one is 2 to cast and gives a creature lifelink, and then you can pay 2 to attach it to a different creature. So that still plays into the shenanigans that you can do with Siona. However, it doesn't work from the grave. It works only in play. It also has totem armor, which means that the enchanted creature, if it would be destroyed, instead you remove this enchantment and it basically stays in play. Spectral Steel, 2 to cast, gives the creature +2/+2, and then instead of returning itself in any way, shape, or form, it actually can be exiled from your graveyard to return another aura from your graveyard to your hand. So in case you lose something that doesn't return itself, this can return it for you. Alright, Sun Clasp, same as the other one that returns back to your hand. It's 2 to cast, gives +1/+3, and then you can return it for 1 white to your hand if in response to a creature dying, or just for shenanigans with Siona. Sage's Reverie, 4 to cast. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card for each aura you control that's attached to a creature. Doesn't matter how many creatures or what creature, as long as an aura is attached to a creature, you draw a card for each one of them. And then the enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each aura you control that's attached to a creature. Not the same creature, any creature. Alright, that can make something really big. Vine Weft, 1 to cast, gives +1/+1 to the creature, and then for 5 you can return it from your graveyard to your hand. See what I mean by resiliency? Everything in here was meant for that. Rancor gives +2/+0 and trample, and then when it is put into the graveyard from the battlefield only, you can return it back to your hand. Canopy Cover, 2 to cast, gives the creature hexproof is what this line is. And then it also says that the creature can't be blocked except by creatures with flying or reach. So it gives some evasion to the creature and some protection. It's a good card. Talons of Wildwood, 2 to cast, gives the creature +1/+1 and trample, which is actually pretty good for the fact that if you build a Voltron instead of a go wide theme, or depending on how the game's flow is going, if you go with the Voltron, trample is very key. And then it can return from your graveyard to your hand for 3. Snake Umbra, 3 to cast. It gives the enchanted creature +1/+1, and whenever it deals damage, not just combat damage, but damage, to an opponent, you may draw a card. And those are the R's that I've chosen. I tried as much resiliency as possible so you can gain as much benefit, especially the ones that move around and can be reused for Siona's ability for token making. So the next section I'm going to go over will be enchantment-based removal. So we are an enchantment-based deck, so I wanted to follow that theme as much as possible. So this is what I came up with. I got a couple of R's that attach to your things, and then remove something from your opponent's side. So we start with Ossification. You enchant a land you control, and then you can remove a creature or planeswalker until this leaves the battlefield, or obviously until if the land is destroyed, this goes to the graveyard as well. Chains of Custody, you enchant a creature you control. That creature gets Ward 2, and then you can exile a non-land permanent an opponent controls until it leaves play. And then Faith Unbroken. It enchants a creature you control, gives it +2/+2, and when it enters, you can remove a creature an opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield. The next ones are going to be all the same style of things, so they are enchantments, not R's, that will remove something on your opponent's side until they leave the battlefield. So Suspension Field removes a creature with toughness 3 or less. Banishing Light exiles a target non-land permanent until it leaves play. Borrowed Time, same thing. Seal from Existence, it's the same thing, except for it itself has Ward 3, making it harder to target it. And the last one is Conclave Tribunal. So it has Convoke, and because Siona creates tokens, Convoke should actually be a benefit here. And then when it enters, you exile a non-land permanent until it leaves play. So those are the enchantment-based removal spells. And then the rest of the utility section will have removal spells, card draw, or quasi-card draw, and stuff like that. So Fragmentize, it's 1 to cast, destroy an artifact or enchantment that's mana value 4 or less. Disenchant, good, oldie but goodie, destroys an artifact or enchantment. Return to Nature, destroys an artifact, enchantment, or removes a card from a grave. Sundering Growth destroys an artifact or enchantment, then you populate, and since Siona creates tokens, you get a benefit from the populate. Commune with Spirits, it actually lets you look at the top 4 cards of your library and reveal an enchantment or land from among them and put it in your hand, and then you put the rest on the bottom in a random order. Commune with the Gods, you reveal the top 5 cards of your library, and you may put a creature or enchantment from among them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. And here's the cool thing, the synergy here is that a lot of the enchantments that you have do return in some way, shape, or form, so it's not as harmful when you put them in your grave. Benefaction of Ronus, reveal the top 5 cards of your library. You can put a creature or an enchantment card from among them into your hand and the rest into your grave. So now, this is a little bit of an upgrade from the Commune with Gods, which is why it costs a little more. So you can get 2 cards out of it. And remember, I just said it earlier, not even 30 seconds ago, some of those enchantments come back, so it's not a horrible thing to synergize with. Michiko's Reign of Truth. So it is a saga. It's 2 to cast. When it enters play, the first chapter triggers, giving target creature +1/+1 until end of turn for each artifact and or enchantment you control, so it can really buff somebody up. It happens again on your next turn for Chapter 2, and then on Chapter 3, you exile it and return it to the battlefield transformed into Portrait of Michiko, which is that it's a 0/0 creature that gets +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment you control. So it could be really big. And the last card in the deck was something I wanted to play with. I didn't realize I had the card, so I'm glad I found it. Season of Growth. It's 2 to cast, that whenever a creature enters the battlefield, it's an enchantment, sorry, that whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you scry 1, and whenever you cast a spell that targets a creature you control, like the auras do, you draw a card. So more card draw for this deck. As far as card draw goes, you should not have any issue with card draw. If you do, the person who gets it, please tell me. I doubt it, but you gotta let me know. And that, my friends, was how I put together Siona, Captain of the Pyleas, on a budget. It's actually sad that the person who ordered this deck decided to ghost me and not go through with the purchase, because this seems like one of the most fun decks I've ever put together on a budget. Honestly, the only other original budget build I think could be more fun would be the didnt deck that I make. This build even got me thinking about making something close to this for my own personal collection that I play with. One little side note about this deck, though, is I originally wanted to change Siona out for Sithis Harvest Hand, but I found out that I didn't have a copy to do that with. However, as I looked at the deck more and more, I realized that this specific build would rather Siona as the general anyway. So, happy accident, I guess. This deck has a metric crap ton of synergy, and I believe the person who does purchase this deck will have a great amount of fun playing it. As far as next week's video goes, I'm going to show you an Angel Tribal build that almost didn't get purchased. I was all set to revamp it for this little adventure I'm doing with decks that were ordered and not paid for, but the person actually came back and purchased it. Since it was already on the schedule to be filmed, I'm just going to squeeze it in between this and the last deck that didn't get paid for, so join me for that next week. That's all for now. Thanks for watching, and if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or concerns, or you just want to talk or chat about any of the videos I put out, you can do so using any of the methods I have displayed here. Additionally, if you would like to support the channel, you can do so in 3 ways. Donations are accepted and greatly appreciated. I have 3 methods with which you can do so displayed on the screen, and keep in mind that no amount is too small. If donations aren't your thing, and you would like to get something for your money, that's great too. I sell a lot of the decks I present on the channel, as well as mystery packs. So, if you're interested in any of these, you can contact me using the information I have up on your screen right now. Directly contacting me is usually the best and cheapest way to do so, but you can always look at what I currently have available on the Facebook Marketplace. And lastly, if you want to show your love and support for the channel, but like myself, are a little strapped for cash, it doesn't cost you anything to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet, watch some videos and give them a like, and possibly share them out on your social medias you use to help spread my content to more people. No matter what way you choose is greatly appreciated and will help support the channel, and I thank you for it. Sadly, that is all the time I have for this video. Thank you for watching, and please, stick around and watch some of the many great videos I've posted over the last few years, and remember to check back again for new content I'll be posting every week. Have a great day.